Welcome back to SH MonsterArts-a-thon. It's called Shamathon. Oh, whatever. Today we're going to be talking about the absolutely fantastic Godzilla 2014 and the Spitfire version of Godzilla 2014. Godzilla 2014 released in September of 2014 in Japan and a month later in the US of the same year. The mold would be reused for the even better release, the Spitfire version, which would drop in summer of 2015. July for Japan, August for the US. Both figures boast amazing leaps and bounds for SHMA. And despite not having the CGI model, Yuji Sakai sculpted this lovely thing using only reference materials from the movie. Spitfire as a whole featured an alternate hand holding the female Muto's head, a normal hand, a heat ray, and a stand for the heat ray. How was that, Rob?
Yeah, you did fine. Let's just move on, please.
Now, I just want to quickly go over the boxes here. I mean, they're nothing to write home about, but the Godzilla 2014 box is pretty dang cool. Deep and light reds surround all the promo shots, the open window being ripped open with those claw marks. Like, anybody that was none the wiser to SH MonsterArts would probably pick this up just based on the box alone. Meanwhile, the Spitfire version, since he was a web shop exclusive, came with two boxes. This standard and very plain looking cardboard box, and this updated box that did away with all of the reds and the open window concept and replaced it all with grays and radiant blues. I am a little bummed that this guy didn't have an open window, but at the end of the day, it's a freaking box. The boxes are meant to look cool, and they look cool, so that's about it. So as far as the base color goes for this figure, I'm just going to give it a solid star because out of all the things that are painted on this figure, I think that looks the best. Just a very nice, plain, blank base color. Sounds pretty boring if you ask me. Well, nobody's asking you, so shut up. Another major strong suit that I think this figure has is just some decently painted toenails as well. While I'm not a fan of the green color to them, they do a pretty good job highlighting the fact that they exist. And this is where I'm kind of at odds with myself here because part of me somewhat wishes that they would have done the same thing with the claws, but another part of me is just very much glad that they didn't do that because as much as I dig the green on the toes, I really don't like the green for the underbelly of the figure. With the toes and the claws, personally, and I know I'm talking about Godzilla here, but it feels like it just makes more sense. And even though I'm really not that big a fan of these greens, I am glad SH MonsterArts stuck to their guns and kept the green mostly on the underside over here, be it on the hands, the forearms, the elbows, the shoulders, and biceps. I'm glad that it's mostly consistent. And yeah, I'm not going to lie, it is pretty cool seeing the base color morph into a different color as you turn the figure about. I just wish it were a different color. Next. And as you can see, as far as the tail goes, you'll only be getting a little bit of that green, more so towards the base of the tail. Yeah, this tail likes to fall off, but I'm not going to take points off for that because it really isn't that big of a deal. But other than that one little shade of green, the rest of the tail will feature mostly no paint, and unfortunately on my copy, just a lot of dust that I can't get rid of. Now, as you saw earlier, there are some spurts of green on Godzilla's back. On mostly both sides, it's a little bit more on the lightly applied side over here. But we're also going to get a bit of that on Godzilla's thigh and on the back of his leg and foot over here. Yes, on both sides in varying degrees of goodness. And that's pretty much it for the greens on this figure, at least on my copy. I'm sure it varies per person, as it usually does. And now for the most egregious paint applications on this figure, the friggin' eyes and the mouth. Yeah, I am never not going to be sour about this, because I will say, in all honesty, had the eyes not been wonked out and had the mouth not been a bloody mess, literally, this figure would probably be more so in my good graces. Sure, from one side, the figure looks monstrous with just some poorly painted teeth. But then the other side, he looks just like he has poorly painted teeth and he's looking at, I don't know, like a glass of Coke that you put down on his favorite coffee table without a coaster. The front-on shot is just ridiculous looking. Hilarious, yes, but for a $60+ figure, no. No, not at all, no. Bad. In fact, the closer of a look you take at this eye over here, you can see that it's not even fully painted all the way. I think what makes this zoom in even worse is mostly just these teeth over here. They're either half painted or bloody. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I would dislike a bloody-ish looking Godzilla, but when it wasn't the intent, And when it comes to Godzilla's cockeyed side over here, this side definitely fared worse when it comes to not fully painted teeth. Despite all of that, though, I have to give them some credit. The membranes on the sides of the mouth and even on the lips are actually painted. Like, I can totally understand why there's red paint on the nose and on the teeth now, but at the same time, you're SH MonsterArts, you should be doing this a bit better. Moving on.
Au contraire there, Robbo, my boy. The eyes offer different posability angles, while the mouth with all of the red gives off a really cool battle damage-esque look to Godzilla. And these greens are awesome. They're bright, they're cool, they're different.
The eyes being crooked is fucking horrendous, and the same goes for the mouth. Godzilla was not bleeding out of his mouth the entirety of the movie. There's no excuse for that. And the greens, admittedly, is more of a personal take on my part. Yes, they do the highlighting, but it also feels more like a clashing effect than it does anything else, and personally, it just doesn't work with me. Alright, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes here. So as I started with before, the base color of this figure is going to get a solid star from me because it just works, and it's even better on this figure because most of that green highlighting is gone. Except where it isn't. Now, admittedly, the greens on this figure are much more tame and not as loud as they are in the standard release. Nothing on the toes, a bunch on the thighs and underbelly. They actually painted this part of Godzilla's crotch unlike the original, and for the most part, it's decent, and I like that it's not as loud, but I also don't like the fact that they didn't paint this whole part on Godzilla's chest. Yeah, it looks like when he was going through painting, they probably had him hunched over like this because, as you can see, there is some green over here, but when you move him up, it's just like completely mismatched. Again, we're going to get some of that effect that the original had with the underbelly colors. Not much of it is going to coat the undersides of the hands and arms this time around. And yet again, while I do dislike the greens do a pretty decent enough job highlighting all the detail in there. This time around, though, on the underside of Godzilla's tail, there's actually going to be some minor greens applied there, especially towards the meatier and chunkier parts of the tail, which I do give them credit for because it doesn't look half bad here. Yes, thank God, no greens on the backs of the legs on either side. And thankfully, none of that will be present on the back either because we get this. This blue metallic paint for the dorsal fins is probably the most impressive thing on this figure. This was my very first Atomic Breath Heat Ray variant figure that I ever got from SH MonsterArts, and I can't not say that I'm not impressed because I absolutely am. From the first time I got him out of the box to today, right now, these dorsal fins still massively impress me. Like, I just cannot get over how great they look, and I love how as they fade and go further down the tail, they kind of turn like a greenish color. I know it's not exactly accurate, but accuracy be damned because it just looks cool. I am just genuinely impressed at everything that SH MonsterArts were able to accomplish with a paint job like this. Good on ya, Sham. And now I have to stop being super duper impressed because the eyes were indeed improved from the first release. He's still not wholly looking forward, but the mouth still has its issues. Are you friggin' kidding me? Shut up and let me talk. First off, they made the membranes glossy, and that's cool by me, but what's not cool is that you didn't finish painting them at all. They stop midway through. And it's like that on both sides with varying degrees of good or badness. Yes, the peepers do in fact look better, as do a majority of the teeth, which, hey, not gonna lie, most of them are painted and most of them are a solid white. They ain't all perfect, sure, especially when it comes to the front over here, since it kind of looks like Godzilla doesn't have front teeth. He totally does, I swear, they're just kind of lost in translation. But yes, I'll give them that. The teeth are definitely better, but again, these membranes, man. Like, if you're gonna go ahead and paint them up in a glossy paint, you might as well just go all out with it. But I guess in that same breath, they might have opted out on doing so just to avoid bloody tooth syndrome. I still give it this. And at least the nails match this go around. I mean, the claws are mostly black, and the toenails seem and look black, but when I look on my camera a little bit, it looks like they have a tiny bit of a green hue to them. So, there you go.
You are ridiculous.
The eyes are definitely better, but the membranes just cutting off right then and there, especially when they went out of their way to make them so glossy, just feels, you know, very half-star-esque. Sure, the improvements were made, but I feel like they could have just gone a little bit harder on this one, that's all.
Reaching! Reaching! Reaching!
No, I'm just being honest about how I feel with this figure. That's all. I'm not trying to be a dick.
No, you're being needlessly harsh. You excused most of this stuff with Ultima.
Hey man, for the asking price, I feel the criticism is well deserved, and you're acting like I didn't criticize Ultima at all. Wow, how mature of you. I'm fitting with this fan base perfectly fine. Alrighty, time to move on over into detail. Now, since both of these figures are exactly the—
Hey Rob,
What's up?
do you think maybe, since we're both essentially going to agree on this part, that maybe I can do the detail portion?
Yeah, I guess so, if you really want to.
Yuji Sakai yet again impresses with his magnificent sculpting techniques. I mean, in just looking at the skin, there's so many things that you can compliment this thing on. And what's even better is once you move his torso forward a little bit, you get a little bit of more of extra spikage over here, so it kind of makes posing him forward a little bit more fluid. It actually looks realistic, I guess. That being said, the dorsal fins are absolutely magnificent. All of the different bumps and grooves in there. It really does look like Godzilla's back is like the bed of a waterfall. And then we have the magnificent detail on the dorsal fins that are on the tail and the detail on the tail itself. It is just magnificent looking. Don't you agree, Rob?
Oh yeah. I can call this thing flawed as much as I want, but the mold is absolutely not that. Yuji Sakai did an amazing job. No matter the side of the tail, it just looks magnificent. I'm especially partial to the underbelly of Godzilla. Rob may not like the green on there, but I think it does an amazing job of really bringing out all of the differing details on there. The inside of the thighs too, of course, but again, the crotch, the torso area, Godzilla's armored chest, it looks so good. Again, all of the different bumps and all of the different grooves with all of the scales on there. No matter which way you pose it, it just looks fantastic. Same thing could even be said for the neck over here. Something that I know that Rob is very partial to is actually being able to see the gills over here. Even though the neck is somewhat segmented for the articulation, they still are very much visible. The paint might not be to everybody's liking, but the flat head, the mean brow, the tiny eyes, the larger head in general, this is something that I'm perfectly fine with Yuji Sakai doing on his own. Especially since me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the 2014 design. And even though I'm a fan of the 2014 design, I think this is a pretty cool alternate design for Godzilla. I'm especially rather partial to the armored skin moving right into the neck and into the back. It really gives Godzilla that lizard look to him, doesn't it? Not to neglect the arms so much, but there really isn't too much going on the inside over here, although the inside of the hands are very, very impressive. It's more so on the top side of the arms where you'll see a lot of that beautiful scale detail. And I think even Rob can agree that this is impressive, but that scale detail is even on the little wrist joint over here. Come on, man, that is just mastery at work. Oh yeah, even my snake in the grass attitude towards SH MonsterArts can't stop me from being impressed by detailed wrist joints, like damn. And something that I enjoy personally is just seeing the differentiation of the scales. On the front, they almost look armor-esque, like Godzilla's wearing armor. But then when you move the figure around, you can see that the scales get smaller, almost as if his skin is getting smoother. Not to detract away from the detail that's on the feet. It might not be the first place you look to, unless you're one of those people that enjoy Godzilla feet, but man, when you look at them, oh my god, it's just so well done. Now, he may not be Shin Godzilla when it comes to his back with open wounds galore, but there is a lot of truly fantastic detail at work here. And Jesus Christ, Rob, can you clean this thing? I mean, isn't that your job? You are the SHMA stan here. Oh, fine, I'll dust him off after the review. My point still does stand, though. It looks awesome. Now I'm further going to discuss the detail on Godzilla's back and dorsal fins via the Spitfire version because, oh, I love that you can actually see how translucent these things are over here. I mean, wow. I didn't know these things were translucent until fairly recently. But the most impressive part is going to have to go to paint and detail. Rob already talked about paint, but the detail on these, oh man, they're award worthy. Really makes me question the $68 price tag because this is so much more than what people paid for. I'm not a fan of the aftermarket, but wow, I would pay any price for this thing. Jamstan! Oh, be quiet, you. Let me gush. This is my moment. Nah, the paint and the detail, even on the tail with the dorsal fins, is just beautiful. And I just absolutely love looking at the back of this figure. It really does look like Godzilla's charging up his atomic breath for an attack, and it's right in your hands. And being able to see the paint and detail on both sides of the dorsal fins, unlike Bandai Movie Monster series, shut up, is a real treat as well, further supporting that Tamashii Nations really do go all out for their releases. They may be one and the same figure, just with different paint, but I think even Rob can agree with me here on this one. Solid stars in terms of detail. Absolutely. And now it is time for accessories, which we're going to go over very quickly. First up, the Godzilla hand holding the female Muto head. It's pretty dang cool. I like how the Muto head looks. I do feel the red for the eye could have been a little bit brighter. But as the years have gone on, I've kind of just assumed that the reason why the red is so faded is because it's a severed friggin' head. She definitely ain't going to have a lot of life in there, dumbass. But for the most part, it is very well painted, nice and glossy, nice paint applications, looking real sweet. SHMA, female Muto figure when. And then we got the Baja Blueberry Atomic Breath Heat Ray effect over here. Beautifully painted, lots of very nice detail. I'm glad that they coated it in this metallic or silver paint on the top and left it mostly blue on the bottom over here. Gives it a very nice shiny and eye-popping effect. Meanwhile, the stand just says Godzilla, and he's got this little doohickey over here to move the heat ray about and such. And just because both of these accessories can be applied to each figure, I mean the atomic breath ray can be applied to any figure, but I'm mostly referencing the female Muto head. I do believe it was essentially made for the original release, but the atomic breath version can hold it too. It's literally just a replaceable hand. Just pop that sucker off like so, pop this sucker in, and all of a sudden this figure's now a 5 out of 5-star figure holding a Muto head. Look at that. It's just perfect. If only this were as simple to get on the little peg over here as it is to get that female Muto head. Now, it is simple, but my copy has an issue with actually staying on. The hairdryer method has not worked. It just goes back to how it used to be no matter what I do with it, but if I get it on the stand good enough and I hold it in such a way when trying to pose it to match up with Godzilla's mouth, come on, there we go. It does its job. It's the Godzilla spitting some blueberry Hawaiian punch fire. 10 out of 10. So now it is time to talk about articulation, and for the most part, I'm only really going to be using one figure, at least until we get to the tail. So let's just get started. Mouth can open and close. The tongue is on a ball joint and can move. Just make sure you got fingernails when trying to do that. I don't know how I managed, but I did. The tongue can move, yes. The jaw is on a ball joint as well, so you can give Godzilla some appropriate reactions. We've got a ball joint up here, a ball joint over here, another ball joint over here. You'll be able to go all the way around at the arms, but they're not going to have the greatest flappy flap motion, which admittedly is okay. You're going to be able to go all the way around at the elbow at the top. You'll be able to bend in this far and out that far, which looks like Godzilla broke his arm. You can do yet another swivel. You can swivel at the wrist over here, and you'll have a hinge at the wrist as well, and you know the whole bit about taking the hand off, switching it so it can do that. Yeah, awesome. Remember this ball joint I talked about before? Well, look at that ab crunch. Oh yeah. Not the deepest ab crunch I've seen, but a welcome one nonetheless. I only wish this portion could ab crunch a little bit. The remedy for said ab crunch is actually going to be within the neck. The neck can do a pretty decent enough crunch, allowing Godzilla to look down pretty dang far. Yes, this is also present on the original release as well. So now they can butt heads. The legs can kick back pretty decently. Actually, they can go all the way around, and I do feel very uneasy doing that with SH MonsterArts. Don't ask me why, I just do. But again, you can kick up and you can kick back pretty dang far. All the way up at the thighs, you will be able to move Godzilla's legs in and out like so, revealing those fantastic little crotch pits. We will be getting a bend in at the knee and a bend out at the knee. Nothing too crazy. Swivel, ball joint as well. Swivel, ball joint as well. Swivel, ball joint as well. And while not crazy, this pivot is rather riveting, but definitely inferior to that of Ultima. And now, the most important part of any Godzilla figure when it comes to Sham is the tail. Ooh boy. Can this guy's tail hold a friggin' pose? Yeah, he's a little loosish over here, but that's okay because for the most part, he can hold it no matter what. Be it straight up like so, be it at a major curve like so. I mean, just look at that U-tail. It looks awesome. Oh, he can come around and do the alternate U-tail pose. It's just really, really good. I mean, it's not super duper solid, but it is phantasmic. Now, earlier I said I would be using the other figure when talking about the tail. Why is that? Well, look at this pathetic excuse for a tail. He's just a flop.
I swear to God you did that on purpose.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, this guy's tail, oh man. It's not as bad as Ultima, because Ultima's tail falls off pretty easily, but my God, at least Ultima's tail can hold a pose. This guy's tail, not so much. Now, this can be fixed with the help of a stand that'll hold it in place, but for the most part, boo. At least the tail can somewhat hold a pose when you have the figure on the ground, so it kind of gets a savior point there. As far as articulation goes, I think both of these lads are worthy of a solid star each. The original is mostly a loss in terms of paint. Can't very much get behind the lazy and dumb mistakes made. Spitfire surely comes out on top as the better release, even with its very minor shortcomings. In terms of paint though, I believe NECA came out on top in comparison to the original.
What? This bloody mess is better?
No, I'm saying the V3 is better than the original in terms of paint.
The original is fine.
No. Allow me to show my work. Also, you should get your water bottle, man. You were sounding a little bit on the raspy side there. NECA's V1 might not have been their best work, but it was their first dance with Godzilla, so exception given. What really puts the knife in Sham's back as far as the standard Godzilla goes was NECA's V3 2014. The paint job is perfect, and a loving recreation of the on-screen counterpart. That's about it, because Sham absolutely does take the cake in terms of sculpt and articulation, but NECA wins the paint war, no question. I'm not always in need of screen accuracy or whatever, but subjectively, NECA is a no-brainer win here. It just looks better.
Sounds like you're letting your NECA bias speak louder than the facts.
Oh, so like how you can't admit that you've overspent on a figure whose quality doesn't match the price?
Oh.
Size comparison time, small, medium, large, and related. This double review, I feel, is a perfect representation of what SH MonsterArts has been like the last couple of years. You've got the first release, which really isn't all that great, but then you have a second release that really picks up the slack, yet is still far from their best. This is yet another instance where I wish we could just mash different figures together. I would love this sculpt and design with a paint job that's similar to NECA's 2014 Godzilla. But at the end of the day, we got what we got, and that's all that matters.
Oh, get the hell over yourself! You're such a fucking hypocrite! You try to hate this line so hard, it's honestly pathetic! You still buy them and criticize them and have about as much credibility as every other Jobby the Hong knockoff on this fucking platform! You're the fucking sham, not SH MonsterArts!
You done?
No, I'm not. How about you actually respond to me and—
Let's agree to disagree. and not argue about this, and we can have a perfectly humane conversation about it later. 7 solid stars for the original, 9 solid stars in terms of the Spitfire. Original Spitfire. Typical. I need some air.
Good. Get your head out of Nekka's ass while you're out there, hack job.
Who are you?
Sorry, tall, dark, gravelly, and creepy. I've got more than enough friends that I know what to do with right now. Why don't you go talk to Doc and see if you're approved?
Always running away.
Who are you? Who are you really? Huh?